Have you ever wished you could just see past the surface, to understand what's really going on inside someone's head? It's a skill we all crave. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into here. We're going to use Friedrich Nietzsche's powerful insights to learn how to read the signs people leave behind and finally understand what they truly mean.
So what are people really hiding? We're all taught to just take people at their word, right? But think about it. That person who seems almost too kind, they might be terrified of rejection. The one who acts so strong all the time, they could be completely crumbling inside. The surface? Well, it's almost never the full story.
And this brings us to a huge idea from Nietzsche. He said, every profound spirit needs a mask. Now for him, this wasn't an insult. It's not about being fake. It's about survival. The mask is a tool for self-protection, and it's almost always born from fear.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to understand the mask itself. Then we'll learn how to read the cracks, those moments when the mask slips. After that, we'll go even deeper to find the wound behind the mask. And finally, we'll talk about what this means for developing a whole new way of seeing people.
Okay, let's jump right into part 1. Everyone wears a mask. We'll start by really getting a handle on this persona that people create just to get by in the world.
So what is this mask really? The best way to think of it is like armor. It's the version of ourselves we build piece by piece, hoping it'll be accepted by others. It's a defense mechanism, plain and simple, usually built from a deep-seated fear of rejection. And honestly, for many of us, it's a mask we don't even realize we're wearing.
But here's the thing about these masks. They're not perfect. They slip, they crack, and people leak the truth all the time. Not in what they're saying, but in all the little inconsistencies. It's in those tiny cracks in the performance where the real person finally starts to show themselves. So how do we actually spot these cracks? Well, Nietzsche gives us 3 key signs to look for. First up is tension. Pay close attention to what makes someone uncomfortable or defensive. That's usually where their armor ends. Second, look for projection. When someone constantly attacks a specific flaw in other people, they're often just showing you what they're hiding in themselves. And third, silence. What a person absolutely refuses to talk about. That tells you everything you need to know about what they're afraid of. Let's take an example you've probably seen. You know, that person who always needs to prove how superior they are. They're always putting others down, always highlighting their own achievements. It's just overcompensation. Behind that whole performance, you'll almost always find a deep, secret fear of just not being enough. Okay, on to our second section, reading the cracks. This is all about spotting those little moments where the performance fails and the truth just kind of spills out. Here's a classic one, the control freak. The tell is that obsessive, gotta-have-it need to micromanage everyone and everything around them. But the truth? It's usually a profound fear of their own inner chaos. The stricter and tighter that outer shell is, the more fragile they probably feel on the inside. They're terrified that if they let go for even a second, it'll all fall apart. And what about the constant performer? We see this everywhere today, right? That loud, perfectly curated performance of a happy, successful, perfect life. This isn't a show of power. Oh no. It's often a signal of a huge inner void. It's all driven by a desperate need to be seen and this deep-seated fear that without the performance, they simply won't be loved. Then you have the person with that unshakable, almost aggressive confidence. You know the type. When someone's certainty feels defensive, it's usually a costume. This can be a subconscious attempt to bury some deep guilt or regret from their past. Real, true self-assurance, it just doesn't need to be that loud. Okay, here's a really practical tool you can use. When someone says something like, "Oh, I never care what people think," they almost certainly care a lot. Exaggeration is just the ego trying to drown out its own doubt. So when you hear those absolute statements, always, never, question the insecurity behind it. More often than not, the hidden truth is the exact opposite. And this is where things get really deep. This leads us to our third section, the wound behind the mask. Now we're going to look for the root cause, the deep story that's driving all these behaviors in the first place. This next idea is one of the most profound insights maybe ever. We love to think that people are rational creatures, right? But so often, their strongest beliefs are just shields protecting old wounds. They form their opinions from their pain, and then they use logic to defend those opinions. The key here is to start looking for what's called the wound.
This is the core emotional injury from someone's past that shapes everything, their beliefs, their fears, their adult patterns. It totally shifts our perspective from asking, what are they doing, to asking the much more important question, what happened to them? So here's how it works. Imagine a little kid who gets punished every time they show emotion. They learn a belief. My feelings are dangerous and wrong. So what happens? As an adult, they repeat that pattern, becoming cold, detached, and avoiding any real emotional connection. They're unconsciously replaying their past. In a way, our adult behavior is really just our biography in action. And here are two really common wounds you'll see play out all the time. First, the fear of being forgotten. This often comes from a child who felt ignored, and it creates an adult who's constantly chasing attention, whether it's through drama or performance. And then there's unspoken envy. Sometimes when someone attacks another person's success, it isn't really hate. It's a painful admission that they admire something they feel they can never have. So, where does all of this leave us? In our final section, we're going to explore a completely new way of seeing, moving from just judging people to actually truly understanding them. You see, this kind of knowledge can be used in two very different ways. It can be a weapon to see through people, to judge them and maybe gain an advantage. Or it can be a mirror, a way to see them and yourself more clearly. The goal here was never manipulation. It was always about creating a deeper, more compassionate connection. Ultimately, the point of all this isn't to become a mind reader. It's to develop a kind of vision that lets you see the fear hiding behind the bully, the insecure child behind the critic, the guilt behind the arrogance. And when you can see that, you stop taking their behavior so personally. You become unshakable. And finally, let's turn this lens around, because every single insight we've talked about isn't just for understanding other people. It's about understanding us, too. So take a second and really think about it. Which of these truths revealed the most about you?